What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is Leo's Nerd Talk, and today we are talking about Afraid. So let's get into that. Hi, my name is Leo, and as I time with movies, TV shows, video game related, or just anything nerdy, you have come to the right place. And like I said, today we are talking about Afraid. So without further ado, let's get into the review. Now, I went into this movie with very, very low expectations. The trailers look very generic, very Blumhouse vibe, something that this was just a quick production, a quick move of a movie. Let's get it out there. Let's continue to flood the theaters with Blumhouse horror movies and move on to the next. That's exactly what this kind of movie felt like to me. It definitely felt like it was going to be very derivative of other movies, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. Not that it's anything great, but it was definitely better than what I thought it was going to be. But before I share my thoughts about Afraid, make sure to let me know what you guys think about this movie in the comment section down below. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And with that being said, let's go ahead and go directly into my pros. Now, starting off with the pros, again, I do actually enjoy the concept of this movie, of this AI kind of infiltrating this family and starting to kind of manipulate the kids and the family and the way they kind of live their lives and the way they do things, and slowly start to become a little bit more sinister over time. I think that is a pretty unique concept, and especially in an era where AI is seemingly one of the biggest topics week after week. It's a lot of big people's big fears in this kind of 21st century of computers taking over, of AI going a little too far. This is definitely a very movie that's for the times, a movie that definitely kind of feeds in and builds up that fear that people currently have right now of what AI can be and how far are we willing to take it before it becomes too much in society. I was thinking that this movie does a decent enough job, especially in the opening scene and certain sequences also throughout the entire movie, of building up actually some pretty good tension of not knowing what's going to happen next, or how A or I, whatever, how they call it, this AI that's infiltrating their house is going to do things to this family. It seems very stationary, and you kind of think like, oh, there's no threat outside of just this little box that she's in, this basically this upgraded Alexa. But then you start seeing how she has some sort of manipulative abilities and how she manipulates people and certain things like that. So it's very interesting of how they kind of build up that tension, build up that mystery, and start to peel back the sinister stuff that or this AI is able to do. And it becomes a little bit worse and worse as it goes on, and the family starts to realize that they're kind of trapped in this situation and there's not really a easy way out. And one little small thing that's not a spoiler or anything, but I do like that they actually mention Hell from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the funny thing too is that I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey this morning before I went to go watch Afraid. And while I was watching that movie, I was like, I guarantee you this is basically what Afraid is going to be like, where you start to realize that things are starting to go wrong and they're trying to sneak around this AI and kind of wanting to shut it down, and it starts to do things to harm people and take over and stuff like that. So I think it's funny that they mentioned it within the movie, that this kind of reminds them also of Hell from 2001: A Space Odyssey. So I thought that was kind of a little fun kind of reference that they did in the movie as well. It doesn't really kind of give this any higher star rating or anything like that, but it is a little fun kind of mention that they do here in the film. I also like John Cho's performance here. I think he's probably one of the only ones that has actually a pretty decent performance. Him and maybe David Dastmalchian. I think both of them actually do a pretty good job. Everyone else, take it, you can take it or leave it. But for sure, John Cho, I think his performance as the father figure here in this family actually did a pretty good job. And I thought his performance was, for being a kind of generic Blumhouse movie, was actually pretty good. And lastly, I enjoy the way this movie kind of wrapped up. It definitely sets up some sequels. I'm not sure if that's really what we really need in this movie. I wouldn't mind them kind of going a little further if they kind of explore this and kind of expand on what this AI is. But overall, I do kind of like how this movie kind of wrapped up, where it didn't give us a happy ending in a sense. I do enjoy that it's a little bit more kind of dark, like you feel stuck, and I do like that in terms of this movie. Sometimes it doesn't always work. There's other movies that do something similar that doesn't work for me, but for some reason in this one, it actually worked for me, and I enjoy the way this film kind of ended. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into my cons. And starting off with the biggest con is that this movie is very generic, very Blumhouse generic production. This movie is essentially Megan, where Megan is an actual animatronic AI doll. This is just like an Alexa pod. And they both do the same thing where Megan is meant to be there to be a friend for the little girl and help her out and help around the house. This thing is meant there to help the kids, help around the house. It's the same exact concept, just using two different devices in both senses, and they both get as sinister, they both get as crazy. So overall, it's pretty generic. Especially like I said, when you come to Blumhouse, they tend to produce a lot of films. Some of them are great, some of them are worst of the year. I wouldn't say this one is worst of the year by any sense of that matter, but it's not anything prolific, nothing kind of game changing. It does play a little bit into today's world fears, but I don't think it does anything exponential where it's going to blow your mind or kind of bring this newfound love for AI horror movies. And I kind of talked a little bit about acting. Besides John Cho, besides David Dastmalchian, everyone else for the most part was honestly pretty cringy. The line delivery was pretty bad. You had certain characters in here, like with a daughter and her kind of boyfriend type thing in a way. His character, I could really just, like, please just write him out because he was so obnoxious. Every time he was on screen, I absolutely hated it. It made no sense why he was even here. You know, there's obviously a plot point to his presence, and we even see the plot point in the trailer, but other than that, I mean, I thought his character was pretty much useless. And again, you just had so many different characters that just felt so generic. And you know, maybe I'm missing something, and they did it in a way where they kind of, the whole cast felt like AI. I don't know, maybe I'm being too smart and giving this movie too much credit by saying something like that, but just the way the acting was, the line delivery, it just wasn't that good. And then you get into like the overall kind of story, it kind of does bounce around a lot where you're following different things that are kind of happening that all centralize around this AI. It gets a little jumbled, and even for a movie that's only a 90-minute runtime, it feels a little long as well. And I think that's because of that storytelling, because of that jumble kind of choppy storytelling, the way it kind of goes from this to this to this to this to this. And while it does all relate to this one central point, it still feels a little sloppy overall. And then you also have some of the human characters that I thought were just like human villains, I should say, human villains that were just like, no, please stop. Like they had these masks, and the masks were emojis, but like deformed, and like it's a sad emoji, but there's like blood coming out of the eye that just looks so awful. Like that is like the bare minimum creativity when it comes to a movie like this that's meant to be about AI and the internet and all that stuff. Using emojis as masks and making them look a little deformed to make it creepy, it just doesn't work. It really doesn't work. It looks stupid. It looks ridiculous. It just throws all the like kind of creepy factor, intense moments out the water when you see something like that. So it was just kind of one of those things that definitely throws you out of the movie. Even though this movie is inherently kind of silly, and it's a silly concept that does have some real life terror and implications, that just kind of throws it out the water and kind of ruins a lot of the atmosphere that this movie kind of does a good job in bringing some tense moments to it. And another thing is, when this movie does make some tense moments, I think it does it pretty well, but then it just throws it away with some really cheap jump scares. And again, very generic scary movie, very generic horror film where you have these cheap jump scares to just startle someone, not necessarily actually terrify them. And it just, again, just feels too generic in a sense. But overall, guys, this movie is fine. I think Afraid is one of those films that is there, that could have gone on streaming. You can have a decent enough time with it. If you turn your brain off, you can have enough time with it. Don't try to nitpick everything like I'm trying to do right now. But overall, I can see myself watching it again, maybe here and there. Who knows? I do like this kind of newer age horror movies where they're implicating technology and stuff. I do think that's an interesting thing to kind of start heading towards. But we need better scripts, better characters, better storytelling, a better villain. You know, Megan from last year or 2 years ago, I can't remember at this point, does this exact concept from the same company, but a lot better in my opinion. This is definitely like a step down of what Megan was in that movie. But overall, let me know what you guys thought about Afraid in the comment section down below. I had a decent enough time with this, some good moments and sequences, but not the best, not the worst. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment sections down below. But again, if you guys like Time I Think movies, TV show, video game related, or just anything nerdy, you have come to the right place, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.